Equality implies individuality. All men are created equal. It is only men themselves who place themselves above equality. With these words, welcome you all to ABS Creations by your educationalist Chandrakala. No matter your social status or how powerful you feel you are, we are all equal. We came here by birth and will live in death. An educational channel with moral values. If you have not subscribed this channel, subscribe the channel by pressing the bell icon to receive the notification. In this session, we will deal with the concept of the French Revolution and the idea of the nation. I hope so. In the previous video, you understood the concept of nation state and the modern state and the imagination created in the print series by the French artist Frederic Soria about the world of democratic and social republic. So in this session, we will deal out the emergence of nationalism in Europe. So the emergence of nationalism in Europe is due to the French Revolution of 1789. The French Revolution of 1789, it has marked the beginning of nationalism in Europe. So as you know that France was a full-fledged territorial state in 1789 under the rule of an absolute monarch. Who was that absolute monarch? King Louis XVI of the Bourbon family. When he ascended the throne in the year 1774, he saw an empty treasury in the kingdom. Long years of war had drained the financial resources of France. Added to this, cost of maintaining an extravagant court at the immense palace of Versailles was also an additional expense. So to meet his regular expenses, such as cost of maintaining an army, the court, running government offices or universities, the state was forced to increase taxes. So French society in 18th century, it was divided into 3 estates and only the members of the 3rd estate paid taxes. So that was the one reason for the revolution. So the political and the constitutional changes that came in the wake of the French Revolution led to the transfer of sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens. So after a lot of struggles here, from the estates to the National Assembly, and from the National Assembly to the constitutional monarchy. So a lot of political and the constitutional changes that came in the wake of French Revolution, it has led to the transfer of sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens. So when the French Revolution took place, various measures and practices has created a sense of collective identity among the French people. So various measures and practices had created a sense of collective identity among the French people. So they were ideas of la patrie, that is the fatherland, and la citoyenne, the citizen. They have adopted equal rights under a constitution. So ideas of la patrie, that is the fatherland, and la citoyenne, the citizen, they have adopted equal rights under constitution. The second one is that a new French flag, the tricolor flag, was chosen to replace the former royal standard. The third salient feature is that Estate General was elected by a body of active citizens and renamed as the National Assembly. First of all, what do you mean by the word Estate General is that it referred to the French Parliament, an elected body which was renamed as National Assembly after the Revolution of 1789. So that is what we used to call it as Estate General. Estate General referred to the French Parliament, an elected body which was renamed as National Assembly after the Revolution of 1789. So the first measure is that the ideas of la patrie and la citoyenne was adopted and adopted equal rights under constitution. The second measure is that a new French flag, tricolor flag, was chosen to replace the formal royal standard. The third measure is that The Estate Generals was elected by the body of active citizens and it was renamed as National Assembly. At that particular period of time, new hymns was composed, oaths were taken, matres commemorated, all in the name of a nation, all in the name of the nation. At the same time, a centralized administrative system has been established. A centralized administrative system has been established in which a uniform laws for all citizens within its territory has to be followed. A uniform laws for all citizens has been implemented. Apart from that, internal custom duties and dues were abolished. At the same time, a uniform system of weights and measures was adopted. And regional dialects were discouraged, and the French, as it was spoken and written in Paris, became the common language of the nation. So these were the various measures and the practices which is followed by the French revolutionaries to create a sense of collective identity among the French people. Even after practicing or introducing various measures and practices which would create a sense of collective identity among the French people, the revolutionaries declared that this French Revolution, it was the mission and the destiny of the French nation, mainly to liberate the people of Europe from despotism, that is under the control of the monarchies, and also to help other peoples of Europe to become a nation, that is independent people. When the news of the events which took place in France reached the different cities of Europe, students and other members of educated middle class, they began setting up of Jacobins Club. When the news of the events in France reached the different cities of Europe, students and educated middle class people, they started setting up a Jacobins Club. Their activities and campaigns prepared the way for the French armies which moved into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland and Italy in the year 1719. With the outbreak of the Revolutionary Wars, the French armies began to carry the idea of nationalism abroad. But the Jacobins Club was a failure. So, by the year 1799, the France came under the control of Napoleon Bonaparte. What may be the reason of it? After the fall of the Jacobin government, it allowed the wealthier middle classes to seize power. So a new constitution was introduced, and a directory of executive made up of 5 members have been appointed. But the new constitution was also a failure. The political instability of the directory also paved the way for the rise of military dictator, that is Napoleon Bonaparte. After capturing the European region, after occupying the region of France here, he crowned himself as the Emperor of France. He set out to conquer neighboring European countries, dispositioning dynasties and creating kingdoms where he placed members of his family. Napoleon saw his role as a modernizer of Europe. He introduced many laws such as the protection of private property and a uniform system of weights and measures provided by a decimal system. Initially, many saw Napoleon as a liberator who would bring freedom for the people, but soon the Napoleonic armies came to be viewed everywhere as an invading force. So when we see Europe under Napoleon, so Napoleon ruled France from the year 1799 to 1815. Napoleon ruled France from the year 1799 to 1815. So he assumed the absolute power in the year 1799. After the fall of whom? After the fall of the Jacobin and the Directory, political instability of the Directory rule in France. So after absolute power, he assumed the absolute power in the year 1799. So he completely abolished or destroyed democracy. So again, France country returned to the monarchy type of government. So after Napoleon Bonaparte took over the throne of France, he destroyed democracy. But in the administrative field, he had incorporated revolutionary principles. He incorporated revolutionary principles in order to make the whole system more rational and efficient. So he formed a policy. In the year 1804, came to be known as Civil Code or a Napoleonic Code. So the Civil Code of 1804, it was also called as Napoleonic Code. So according to the policies of reform measures formed by this Napoleon Bonaparte, he abolished all the privileges based on birth. He established equality before the law. He secured the right to property, protection of private property. He simplified the administrative systems. He abolished the feudal system and freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. At the same time, in the towns and cities, guild restrictions were removed. Transport and communication systems were improved. Peasants, artisans, workers, and new businessmen enjoyed this newfound freedom. Even the businessmen and the small-scale producers of goods, they began to realize that uniform laws, standardized weights and measures, and a common national currency would facilitate the movement and exchange of goods and capital from one region to another. But in the areas conquered by Napoleon Bonaparte, the reactions of the local population to French rule were mixed. Initially, in many places such as Holland, Switzerland, Brussels, Mainz, Milan, and Warsaw, the French armies were welcomed as harbingers of liberty. What do you mean by the word harbingers? That is something is going to happen. So that is what harbingers of liberty. But the initial enthusiasm soon turned to hostility as it became clear that new administrative arrangements did not go in hand with political freedom. Taxation and censorship were imposed. And the military services has become mandatory. So militarily, Napoleon proved to be an oppressor for the people of the conquered territories. Taxation and censorship were imposed and military services were made mandatory. So these were the principles of the Civil Code. So according to the Civil Code, Napoleonic Code in 1804, he established equality before law, abolished all privileges based on birth, granted the right to property to French citizens, simplified administrative divisions, abolished feudal system and freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues, improved transport and communication. At the same time, Militarily, Napoleon proved to be an oppressor for the people of the conquered territories. Taxation and censorship were imposed and military services were made mandatory. So I think you understood the concept of the French Revolution and the idea of the nation. So understand the concept. Try to answer these questions. Test yourself. What led to the emergence of nationalism in Europe? What political and constitutional changes did France saw in the wake of French Revolution? Explain the measures introduced by the French Revolutions to create a sense of collective identity amongst the French people. Explain the features of Napoleonic Code. Napoleon had no doubt destroyed democracy in France, but in the administrative field, he had incorporated revolutionary principles in order to make the whole system more rational and efficient. Support the statement. Explain the revolutionary reforms incorporated by Napoleon in France and his conquered territories. In the next session, we will learn about the second concept, that is the making of nationalism in Europe. If you like this video, you can comment it, you can share it, you can subscribe it. Thank you.